Greetings, everyone. There are a lot of questions that needs clarity on holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permits following the circular by the Minister of Home Affairs on whether holders of Zimbabwe exemption permits do they still need to apply for a waiver or not. The answer is very, very simple. You simply check the requirements for a general worker visa. Once you check the requirements, you tick a requirement that you do not qualify under, right? You go to the website, you check the requirements. You tick the requirement which you do not qualify under. If there is a requirement that will prohibit you to obtain a general worker visa or any other visa, you then apply to ask the minister to remove that requirement. In other words, to waiver that requirement. So you start by ticking, right? The first requirement, which many people were having difficulty, was to go back to Zimbabwe to apply for a general worker visa, right? So that requirement, because it says, the law says you cannot change the condition of your permit or your visa in South Africa. If you came on a visitor's visa or you have been on a special visa, you cannot change to a mainstream visa from a special visa, while in South Africa you need to go back to your country of origin. So on the 25th November 2021, that requirement was waived by cabinet, right? So you no longer have to go back to Zimbabwe to apply from Zimbabwe. So you no longer have to take that one because it is no longer necessary, was waived. That's one. Number two, you need, in terms of the requirement, you need a police clearance from your country of origin, right? Many people, if you remember, they were applying for police clearance to have the certificate of a police clearance from Zimbabwe. That was later on removed as a requirement for holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permits, right? So there's no need now to have a police clearance. That means without a police clearance, you can submit your application if you are a holder of a Zimbabwe exemption permit, right? We're still ticking, by the way. Right? You go to radiology, right? I'm not very sure on this one. You will assist me because you are the ones that are submitting, and or some of you have submitted. If the radiology is no longer needed, which I've been talking to those that have been submitting, is no longer required. So you no longer need to do that. So you do not need to worry about that, as I understand, and that you will have to correct me, right? You go to a medical report. Is the medical report needed? If the medical report is needed, what can stop you in obtaining a medical report? What is the difficulty in going to a medical practitioner to get a medical report for you to submit your application for a general worker visa? None. Right? There's nothing that can stop you to go and do a checkup and have a medical report, right? So there's no need for you to ask the department to waiver that requirement, because you can simply go to a medical practitioner, you get them to check you, and they give you a medical report which you then submit. So you do not need to apply for a waiver to have a medical report removed, right? We're ticking. We then go to because when you're applying for a general work visa, if you are not a holder of a Zimbabwe exemption permit, you need to satisfy the Department of Labor and Employment that there's no South African who can do the job that you have been employed to do. So the minister has waived that requirement that you no longer need to submit a labor certificate in terms of the circular, right? So it means now you can submit without the labor certificate from the Department of Labor and Employment. 4, we're ticking. 4, then you need, if you are not a holder of a Zimbabwe exemption permit, you are applying for a general work visa, you need to evaluate your certificate. Submit them to the South African Qualifications Authority for them to evaluate. The circular says the minister has waived that. So you no longer need to waiver that requirement because the minister has waived it. Now, so that you no longer have to go back to Zimbabwe to apply. You no longer have to provide radiology. You no longer have to submit a certificate from the Department of Labor. You no longer need to submit a certificate from the South African Qualifications Authority. So as you look into your requirements, your list of requirements, what is it that can stop you from submitting a general work visa? In other words, if you submit a general work visa, with these 4 being no longer required, what is it from the requirements, if you're applying for a general work visa, that can lead to you being rejected? What is it that you do not have? Because you have your Zimbabwean passport, it's a requirement, right? It is valid. You have a letter from your employer. You have been working for the last 5 years, right? You have proof. This is why a letter of the employer you have. Your employer is giving you the letter, right? So what is it that you require? Nothing. You have your passport. You have your, because the requirement is that you must have, if you are renewing, a general work visa, you must have a valid permit. In this case, you have a ZEP is valid. So what you have is, you have your Zimbabwean passport, it is valid. You have your ZEP, it is valid. You have no problem in getting a medical report. You have no problem in getting a letter from your employer as proof that you are working, right? So what will stop you in submitting for a general work visa? Write in the comment section and say, Comrade Mabena, in terms of the requirements, I cannot submit, or if I submit, I will be rejected because I can't meet this requirement. Once you say so, we then look into that. But the police report from Zimbabwe is no longer needed. You no longer need to go back to Zimbabwe to apply from there. You no longer need a certificate, the minister to waiver the labor certificate. You no longer need to take your qualifications to be evaluated by the South African Qualifications Authority, which, by the way, many people have been rejected on the basis that they do not have the certificate from the South African Qualifications Authority. So what is it in terms of the requirements that will make you not qualify for a general work visa? If all these requirements make you qualify, don't apply for a waiver. Apply straight for a general work visa. In the next video, we are then going to talk about those ZEP holders who are applying for a business visa and a spouse visa, because the requirements are different. Here is just a general work visa. Please write in the comment section, like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are on TikTok, please do follow us. Otherwise, have a great day. Goodbye.